What up, everybody? It's your boy, Cardinal Red. And this is American Gangsters of Boxing. Alright, y'all, so I want to start out this new series focusing in on who I think is the most notorious boxing promoter of my generation, the last generation, and the generation before that. The story of Bob Arum goes back in the sport of boxing almost 50 years. Doing the amount of research that I have and following the amount of fighters that I have that were promoted by Bob Arum, I know there's a lot of shady dealings that went on when it comes to a lot of Bob Arum's fighters. And I think the most shady fight or the most shady situation that came up arose during the end of Manny Pacquiao's stay at Top Rank Boxing when he fought the Australian Jeff Horn. Basically was, robbed, for a lack of a better word. So I want to dive deep into that specific fight and that specific scenario. I want to start out by referencing an article that kind of sparked my interest to go into this topic of American Gangsters of Boxing. And it basically details not only Bob Arum's dealings with the mafia during his early stint in the sport of boxing, but it also led me to some other information about Bob Arum's dealings with the federal government of the United States, who he used to work for, what some people perceive him to be still to this day. So I want to reference this article before we get started with the actual documentary portion. So, all right, the article states, Arum discussing some of the old days in the sport when it was well known that the mafia controlled at least a large part of what went on in the sweet science. The only fighter at that time that wasn't mobbed up was Muhammad Ali. Arum told because he was involved with the Nation of Islam, the mob guys didn't want to get involved with the nation because they had never seen anything like that. It wasn't worth it to them. Their involvement in boxing was less to make money than to be big shots and be in the sports scene. For example, you get these multi-billionaires who own baseball teams and basketball teams and football teams, and it's not their real primary business for many of them, but it gives them a lot of prestige. Well, mob guys in those days had connections to different fighters and different enterprises, not necessarily for the money, although the money was important. It was because it made them big shots. So when the Nation of Islam reared its head with Ali, it wasn't to their advantage to continue like they were before, dominating boxing, because it became all crazy and complicated. Arum described how over time the mafia's influence waned as fighters found more legitimate sponsors and people to back their careers. Gradually, it shifted from mob-controlled sport to a sport that the mob would keep away from because they didn't want to get involved, Arum said. And when I got involved in boxing after I left the U.S. Attorney's Office and started representing Ali, the mob stayed away from me because they all believed I was still a federal agent undercover. They were all scared of me. Some of them still believe it. Don King believes it. Now, I had no idea until I read this article. You know, I knew that Bob Arum had involvement with the mob, but I didn't know about his involvement with the federal government and the fact that people really perceived him to be some kind of agent. And uh, it's crazy that to this day a lot of people still believe he is a federal agent, and I think that plays a big role. Not only the mob ties, but his ties with the government, into what might have actually happened with Manny Pacquiao, uh, and why Bob Arum, for lack of a better word, screwed him so bad. And I want to get started from the beginning with this Pacquiao story. So I'm going to let Bob Arum and Manny Pacquiao start off the show.
People are attracted to greatness, and that's why when Tiger Woods was beating everybody, the ratings for the telecast were out of sight, and the same thing with Michael Jordan. People want to see greatness, and Manny Pacquiao represents greatness.
It was almost like a match made in heaven. When Bob Arum found Manny Pacquiao, I think he found his golden goose, his new Ali, his replacement for Floyd Mayweather Jr. And not only was Manny Pacquiao good, but as you heard Bob Arum himself say, Manny Pacquiao was greatness. And it's confusing when you think about it and try to figure out what actually went wrong with the relationship of Manny Pacquiao and Bob Arum. And I think that it started here.
He looks as good, if not better, than I've ever seen him. And, I don't know, Freddie, what he's predicting, but I really think Manny's going to stop.
The Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, Maypac fight, for lack of a better word. I think this is where the end for Bob Arum and Manny Pacquiao actually started. I think because of the amount of money Bob Arum invested within that fight, the fact that I think Bob Arum still knew that Manny Pacquiao was too much to match Terrence Crawford up against, it started a ball rolling for Manny Pacquiao to be removed from Top Rank Boxing. I think the end goal for Bob Arum was not only to have Pacquiao leave Top Rank Boxing and for that $10 million he was commanding, actually way more than that, because I think he ended up paying Pacquiao close to 100. Pacquiao might not have got the full $100 million for that Maypac fight, but I think that got a ball rolling to where Bob Arum decided it's time for me to move on. And unfortunately for Manny Pacquiao, I don't think he just wanted Pacquiao to leave, but he wanted Pacquiao to retire because he wanted Pacquiao out of the way of Terrence Crawford. And for Pacquiao to still be around, it creates a big problem for Terrence Bud Crawford. And for what Bob Arum knows Pacquiao most likely would do to Terrence Bud Crawford. And you know what's strange and what's commendable on Manny Pacquiao's part? At no time did Manny Pacquiao ever speak ill toward Bob Arum.
I started with Bob Arum. He helped a lot in my career. So I cannot say, I am kind of person that, I don't want to say bad things about it, because of my success. I always thankful to the people who contribute.
Now, although Pacquiao never spoke ill about Bob Arum per se, I think Pacquiao knows that he had a hand in what happened to him. And I hate to use the word conspiracy, but there was definitely a lot of strange coincidences that fell right on top of Pacquiao when the Horn fight actually happened. And I think I want to start off by letting an OG in the sport who was very close to Muhammad Ali and Bob Arum explain exactly what were Bob Arum's ties to not only the mob but to the federal government.
Let me get this straight. Robert F. Kennedy, RFK, he sent Bob Arum eventually to go clean up boxing from the mafia? What did Arum do to get the mob guys out?
Arum didn't do nothing. Arum retired from the Justice Department and became a promoter.
Yeah, but the mob guys, they just roll over and give them the business?
How Arum got in? Arum had Ali. And you know they weren't going to touch Ali because they feared Malcolm. Even after Malcolm died, they feared the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Muslims. But for a long time, Arum didn't do no fights but Ali. As the years came on, Arum signed other fighters.
So did he do business with the nation because it was like protection? Because he knew that no one would do anything?
Arum get business, once Arum got in it, and Arum get business with anybody because Arum had the whole Justice Department with him. He's tight with the Kennedys, and today he's protected by the Kennedys.
Basically what I took from what Leon Muhammad had to say was Bob Arum, for nearly 50 years in the sport of boxing, has had free reign to basically manipulate and do whatever he wants to do within the sport of boxing because of his ties not only with the mafia, but his ties with the United States government and the Justice Department. It's interesting that Bob Arum kind of turned on Pacquiao based off of money and tax issues and the Floyd Mayweather fight. And I don't know whether Bob Arum took care of Pacquiao's tax issues through the Justice Department and felt like he would recoup his money from the Mayweather fight, and maybe him and Pacquiao worked something out as far as his payment, because if you remember, Pacquiao was kind of hot because he didn't receive all of his money from the Mayweather fight. So, you know, there's some really, really shady things surrounding not only Bob Arum, his mob ties, his ties to the government, but the May-Pac fight. And we haven't, not only to mention, we haven't seen Floyd Mayweather professionally. You know, now he has had some bouts that people might say were professional bouts. We haven't seen him fight a professional challenger, real challenger, since Manny Pacquiao. So I would say that there's a lot of shady things that surround not only the end of Manny Pacquiao's boxing career with Top Rank, but, you know, Bob Arum, the mob, the Justice Department, and Floyd Mayweather Jr. Now let's hear what the people around the world had to say about the Jeff Horn fight and Bob Arum.
That's what they did tonight. They gave a trophy, a win, a huge win, to Horn, the local kid, for trying hard. You're not supposed to get it for trying hard. You're supposed to get it for winning. And I thought Pacquiao won the fight. If you go by the real rules, the Marcus of Queensberry rules, who lands the cleaner punches?
Let me give you 3 key details why a lot of people believe that Manny Pacquiao was set up. Number 1, the key suspect that a lot of people point to is Bob Arum. You know, when Manny Pacquiao lost to Timothy Bradley in a controversial decision, people were hot. Especially Bob Arum. He was yelling, telling everybody it's robbery. Hey this, hey that, this is bull. We're going to get rematch, this and that. So everybody is waiting for you after this fight to scream to the top of your lungs in the roof. And what did we hear Bob Arum say? Manny lost. The judges were right. Manny lost. What? This is supposed to be your cash cow? Jeff Horn's the champion. He got the WB about now. Get over it. Since when did you not put up a fight for Manny Pacquiao? Very, very strange. Number 2. Word around the street is that Manny's contract is up. That was his last fight. That's another reason why a lot of people think that he was set up. Maybe Bob Arum is done with him. Maybe he's focusing more on Terrence Crawford. Maybe Bob Arum is done with him. Maybe he's focusing more on Terrence Crawford. Because listen, Bob Arum has to pay out a lot of money for every time Manny Pacquiao fight. He's given up $10 million that he had to give to him plus. Can he afford to keep paying Manny $10 million and up? Now that his contract is up, does it seem like he's ready to push Manny Pacquiao to the side now? Number 3. When people are guilty for doing something, it seems like they like to blame other people. All of a sudden, 2 days later, Bob Arum is screaming to the rooftop, blaming Freddie Roach, Boo Boy. Freddie Roach isn't doing a good job, and he was losing the fight, and Freddie allowed him to get a headbutt. What in the world is Freddie Roach supposed to do? She's like, there's nothing but confusion over there. It's their fault. It's the corner's fault why Manny Pacquiao lost.
Horn or Manny Pacquiao?
Pacquiao, man.
Who won, Jeff Horn or Manny Pacquiao?
Manny Pacquiao.
I don't think he won the fight. Honestly, I don't think he won the fight. But I can tell you that he did enough in there to make it look, like he won the fight.
I wanted a rematch when I lost, and they refused. I'll fight anybody, says superstar Manny Pacquiao. Yet while the amazing 40-year-old might or might not wind up facing Keith Thurman next, or maybe even fellow megastar and all-time great Floyd Mayweather, one man Pac-Man will not be fighting next or at any other time is Australian warrior Jeff Horn. As fans, of course, know, the Hornet scored the biggest win of his career back in July of 2017 when he stunned Pacquiao to take a unanimous decision and the WBO welterweight title. And now with Pacquiao back as big and maybe as good as ever, Horn has called for a return fight with the Filipino icon. Horn has fought up well above the 147-pound limit quite recently, but he will welcome a second fight with Pacquiao at welterweight. Horn would love the chance to prove this win was no fluke, but Pacquiao has poured cold water on such a notion. As quoted by the Manila Times, Pacquiao said that he will not be fooled again by Horn and that he wanted a rematch soon after he had lost to the Australian, but not any longer. Unsettled business. I wanted a rematch when I lost to Horn, but they refused, Manny said. Now that I've won in my comeback fight in the U.S., they're negotiating for a rematch. They were taking advantage of me. They took advantage of me the first time, but never again. They fooled me once.
All right, so, I think Pacquiao chose those words purposely. They fooled me once. And, to wrap things up here, there's actually a lot to be said here. I think there were a lot of dynamics at play. I think that Bob Arum is one of the most shadiest promoters in the boxing game, along with his counterpart, I would say, is Don King. Some would say maybe Al Heyman today, but Don King in his day was Bob Arum's counterpart. But I think there are a lot of dynamics at play here. And I think that the main one to focus on would be that Jeff Horn fight. What was Bob Arum trying to accomplish by having Pacquiao lose to Jeff Horn? Why would he go through so much trouble? And I think Pacquiao and everyone who I referenced in this video kind of alluded to, they were building a new champion in Terrence Crawford. And what Bob Arum had to do was decide, do I want to keep, feeding my cash cow, or is it time to reinvest into a new cash cow? Because eventually this one is going to run its course, and this one is on the uprise. And I think what he decided to do, this is all speculation, but I think what he decided to do, and the fact that he is so well connected with the mob, with the United States government, with the Justice Department, he knows high people in high places. I know this fight took place in Australia, but America is very good allies with Australia. So it's not a far reach to say that there were some other dynamics at play. And I think the outcome for Bob Arum was this. If I can get Pacquiao to lose to Horn, I can set up a fight between Pacquiao and Crawford in the future. I think this was his plan. Pacquiao loses to Horn. Pacquiao rematches Horn eventually. I think he wanted it to happen sooner than later, because I think he felt like, well, if he loses to Horn, I can just place Horn against Crawford. Crawford gets the belt. Then Pacquiao can not only fight Horn again in a rematch, it won't be for a title. Terrence Crawford will be the title holder, but it will set up a title fight for Terrence Crawford and Manny Pacquiao. And in the meanwhile, you have Horn. Now, I do believe that Pacquiao won that first fight. It should have been unanimously, but he got banged up. He got bruised up really bad in that fight. And I think that their plan was to run him through that gauntlet twice and then have Terrence Crawford beat him and be crowned the king of Top Rank. I think that's how they wanted it to play out. Fortunately for Manny Pacquiao, like he said, they fooled me once. He saw the plot twist playing out. He saw what they were trying to set up. And fortunately for him, he still had the skill set, the talent to say, you know what, I don't have to stay here and re-sign. I'm going to move on to PBC boxing and perhaps start a new legacy, something maybe even better than what I did at Top Rank Boxing. Because at Top Rank, the competition wasn't that high in the last few years Pacquiao was there. It was very high in the beginning, kind of low at the last few years Pacquiao was there. The competition at PBC, although not tested in my mind, was much higher than what Top Rank had to offer. Now, I would like you guys' opinion. Do you feel like Bob Arum's mob ties, his ties with the American government, his ties with the Justice Department, and what happened with not only Pacquiao but Mayweather and countless other fighters makes Bob Arum the most notorious promoter of our generation and the last generation, and places him as an American gangster of boxing? Let me know what y'all think about that. Let me know what y'all think about the new series. Please leave me a thumbs up, a like, subscribe, share. Please share. Now I do, before I get out of here, want to touch on, because I think this ties in very well to what just happened today. Today is August the 10th, 2021. And as of today, Manny Pacquiao versus Spence Jr. has been canceled. And I was, Captain Full G is the one broke the news to me. Him and another guy who's on my WhatsApp group, they broke the news to me. Captain Full G put out a video. And here's my thoughts on the situation. I think Pacquiao needs to tread lightly right here because he's in the same situation he was with Bob Arum. I don't know how shady Al Heyman is when it comes to boxing, who he's connected to. who he's connected to outside of boxing. But I do know Al Heyman was a very, very shrewd businessman in the music industry. And there's no telling what they could be setting Pacquiao up for. But what I see is this. It's almost like the Jeff Horn situation. They could have placed at top rank. They could have placed Pacquiao to fight Crawford, and while Pacquiao was the champion, it never happened. And what they ended up doing was placing him against a bully fighter, trying to bruise him up, trying to soften him up, and then feed him to Terrence Crawford. And it's almost like they're doing the same thing now with you guys, because Earl Spence has an eye injury, and it's blowing my mind that an eye injury is going to stop this fight. We were supposed to have the Crawford fight. It fell apart. Then we got the fight that we actually really wanted in the beginning, which was the Spence fight. Now it's fell apart. And it's almost like PBC, in my mind, got smart and said, hey, whoa, Pacquiao's knocking guys out in sparring practice and sparring. Well, are we sure we want to put our cash cow, our next generation cash cow, up against this seemingly monster from the last generation who just won't go away? Maybe they got smart and said, hey, we need to get this guy out of this fight. Pacquiao looks too good, and we need to put Pacquiao in there against a Jeff Horn style of fighter. Let him get bruised up, banged up. Let you guys go in there, throw elbows and headbutts at Pacquiao, soften him up, and then we'll feed him to Earl Spence a year from now when Spence has had a little more recovery time. Pacquiao, I'm going to say this when it comes to injuries. They're not a joke in the sport of boxing. Anything can end the fight, an ankle turn, a wrist, but once a fight is signed and you're 2 weeks away, you normally don't see fighters back out. They either go in there and take their loss like a man, or they reschedule the fight. Now, he didn't ask to have the fight rescheduled, which in my mind says there's something shady going on behind the scenes. Why wouldn't you just have the fight pushed out another month, or another 2 months to get your eye in order? Pacquiao could have done that when he fought Mayweather, but instead he manned up with a shoulder injury, went in there, and he won in some eyes, he lost in some eyes. But he took it like a man. Why is Earl Spence not taking it like a man? There has to be something going on behind Pacquiao's back. And I would be very, very careful of what I'm getting myself into if I were Manny Pacquiao. Because not only are they extending his career out an extra fight, because if he didn't fight you guys and just fought Earl Spence and won, then he would be moving straight on to fight Crawford. Now you have a situation where, yeah, he can get that belt back if he beats you guys, but what type of beating could he possibly get from you guys before he faces either Spence or Crawford in the future? Let me know what y'all think. Thumbs up. Please like, share, subscribe, and comment, you guys. It's your boy Cardinal Red, and we are out of here. American Gangsters of Boxing.